Welcome in. Jesse Schule here from jesseschule.com. This is our 2023 college football bowl game preview, and I've got three special guests joining me today to give their perspective on three of the major bowl games at the end of the year. And for those of you who haven't tuned in previously, we do things a little bit differently on this show. Rather than bringing guys in to give free picks and patting them on the back and telling them they're good boys, I bring in guys that have different ideas than me, and we have a bit of a debate about it. And sometimes I come out on top, and sometimes they do, and I just think it's more fun that way. So without any further ado, let's get it started. I'm going to bring out Joey Tran at Betting Underdog, and he's going to talk about his favorite team, the Penn State Nittany Lions. Joey, they're taking on Ole Miss. I don't even know. Do you know what the name of this bowl is, Joey?
It is the Peach Bowl, the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl.
The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So you're going to tell me that Penn State's going to win. Do you want to go first? Or you want me to go first?
I'll go first today.
You better, because I don't have a lot to say about this bowl game. But you go ahead, man.
All right, let's rock and roll. So am I slightly biased because I'm a Penn State fan? A little bit. However, Penn State's defense was phenomenal this year, minus those two games against Ohio State and Michigan. They're allowing just 252 yards per game, and they allowed just an average of 11 points per game. They have forced 6 turnovers their last 4 games coming into this one. Ole Miss thrives on their pass game, especially coming from Jackson Dart. However, the Penn State secondary is going to give them trouble in this bowl game. Their secondary is allowing just 153 passing yards per game, and if they can't pass the ball, it sucks for them because their rush defense is allowing just 69 yards per game. The game against Michigan State was awesome. They let Drew Aller throw the ball, and honestly, they need to let him do it again. He threw for 292 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, and if they let him do that, he can definitely throw all over this Ole Miss defense. Their secondary is allowing 220 passing yards per game, and they've allowed over 300 in 2 of their last 4. Penn State's 8-1 against the spread after 3 straight conference games, and Ole Miss is 2-9 against the spread after a game where they've forced 1 or less turnovers. Give me Penn State, Jesse.
All right, Joey. Well, let me ask you a question. Coming into this season, before week 1, it seems to me that there was a lot of hype around this year's Penn State team. A lot of people were talking serious contender for the Big Ten. Did you feel that way before the season started?
Personally, I did. I really thought Drew Aller was the real deal, and I was let down. But he's sophomore year. I think he still has a lot in him. And like I said, that game against Michigan State, he really threw the ball well. They actually let him throw some deep balls, and that's the type of quarterback he is. You can't let him just throw 3 or 4 yard screen passes and hope just move the ball. You got to let him throw it, and that's what I want in this bowl game.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm going with this is I look at a team like Ole Miss. I look at where they finished in the SEC. They had some decent games. They were leading in the first half against Alabama. You know, they basically had a similar season to they had last year, but they pretty much achieved what we expected them to achieve. If you asked any expert before the season, where will Ole Miss be at the end of the year, they pretty much put them where they are. So not a disappointing season for Ole Miss, but a much more disappointing season for Penn State. And I know they don't have the controversy that we see at Ohio State, for example, with a ton of players opting out, the quarterback transferred out, and looks like the Buckeyes will be shorthanded for their bowl game. I still think that Penn State is not going to be as gung-ho as perhaps Ole Miss will be in this game. I think Jackson Dart could go off here. Apparently, everybody wants to play for Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's the kind of coach that his style is very suitable for a bowl game. He could plenty of time to scheme up some stuff on offense. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have to wait and see what happens in the transfer portal, who's going to actually play for these bowl games. But I don't see a lot of excitement surrounding this Penn State program at the moment. I wouldn't want to back them as a favorite. I think they came into the season quite overrated. It was a pretty disappointing year, I thought, for Drew Aller. He looked like a deer in the headlights in the games against Ohio State and was it Michigan, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And Ole Miss is not Ohio State or Michigan, but they are an SEC team that's pretty damn competitive in the SEC. And I don't want to sound like a guy with too much SEC bias, but I think the bottom end of the Big Ten, the teams that Penn State makes themselves look so good against, are completely inferior to the teams that you see Ole Miss play in the SEC week on, week out. And that sort of was the theme with Penn State this season. They were notorious for covering the spread. Franklin was running up scores against bad teams, and that left a bad taste in my mouth. I do remember that one game where the quarterback went to kneel and threw a touchdown pass. And I personally think that the football gods, the game of football, owes him one. And somebody's got to reach through the heavens and strike that man down for doing that in a football game. And I hope it's Lane Kiffin in the Peach Bowl. So, I didn't put a ton of analysis into this game, but from where I'm sitting and what I'm seeing in these early days, I would lean toward taking the points with Ole Miss. But before I send you backstage, Joey, why don't you tell us how you've been doing, what your hot streaks are, and where everybody can find your picks?
Yeah, you can find me over at jesseschule.com. You can find me on Twitter at bettingunderdog. I'm doing pretty well right now. I'm 15-9, my last 24 picks, 6-4 college basketball, and I'm winning 71% of all NHL plays. And I have my NHL Atlantic Division Game of the Month up, so check it out.
Well, thank you, Joey, and we'll see you in a minute. I'm going to bring out my man Rye Cape to talk about. We're talking Florida State and Georgia, and you're going to tell me that Florida State got robbed, aren't you?
Kind of.
Well, I got some strong feelings about this game, Rye. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, let's have it.
Yeah. I'm not going to say that they got robbed, but I will say that they're going to have a chip on their shoulder. They have to be upset that they didn't make the playoffs. They should have all the motivation in the world in this game. They want to show everyone why they should be in the college football playoff. Obviously, Georgia feels slighted too, but in fairness, they did lose the SEC championship, whereas FSU won all their games. So here I'm going to assume that Rodemaker is going to play. This team has shown that it can win without Travis. If Rodemaker can limit his mistakes, FSU should be able to move the ball. They also have a good run game. I do expect Benson to opt out, but they have depth at running back. Toffoli was great against Louisville in the ACC championship. He had 118 yards on 10 carries with a touchdown. FSU has a strong defense. They take away the downfield passing plays. So it'll make Georgia throw shorter passes, which will allow FSU defense to tackle the pass catcher for losses, pressure the QB to make mistakes. FSU does have the number 6 scoring offense in football. They should have no trouble with the Georgia offense. Georgia could be missing Carson Beck and Brock Bowers. So depending on who their quarterback is, we don't know. But whoever it is, this guy probably hasn't gotten a lot of snaps, which as either Florida State quarterback has actually seen some action this season. I think Georgia will have trouble running the ball. Obviously, both of these rosters are going to look different than what they do now because of the opt-outs. There's a lot of NFL talent on both of these teams, so make sure you keep an eye out on that. I actually think this number drops, so I love the number of 14, but I think this number is just too big. Should be a close, low-scoring game, which benefits the dog. FSU had an under streak of 4-1 their last 5 games. Georgia went under their last 3 games. So FSU will keep this game close with the chance to win it at the end. Also, in the Orange Bowl, underdogs are 14-6 against the spread, dating back to 2004. So that also favors Florida State.
All righty. Well, I guess first off, I'm glad you didn't lean too heavily into that whole Florida State got screwed narrative, because that kind of pisses me off, to be honest with you. I've seen a lot of the media really leaning into it, talking about, the money and the this and the corruption. And, you know, in my opinion, I've been watching sports for a long time. Teams get screwed. They get screwed all the time. The Dallas Cowboys, Des Bryant had a catch in a playoff game. The game was decided on a bad call. You got the tuck rule with New England and Pittsburgh. You got all sorts of examples of teams getting screwed in championship games, in playoffs. That's what we deal with in the world of sports. And as far as what the playoff committee did, they left Florida State out because they didn't feel Florida State would be competitive. And the fact that they're a 14-point underdog against Georgia suggests that Las Vegas agrees with them. And I agree. And I know there's a narrative that Florida State wants to win this game to snub their nose at the playoff committee and show everybody what they're made of. And we're better than you think kind of thing. The problem with that is they're also talking about boycotting this game altogether. So it's hard to get up for a game when you're threatening not even to play in the first place. We know Jordan Travis won't be back. You mentioned Tate Rodemaker, and I do believe that Rodemaker has potential to be a lot better than whatever we've seen from him so far, especially with Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman. But those guys, I mean, Wilson's already opted out. I don't know if Coleman's going to play. I wouldn't be surprised if he opts out. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Ben. I mean, they're going to have a ton of opt-outs, and this rage and this, revenge kind of attitude. We're still 3 weeks out from this game, but by that time, I think the team with something to prove is probably going to be Kirby Smart's Georgia Bulldogs. And I will mention when we talk about who's going to play and who's going to opt in and who's going to opt out, keep in mind this Georgia team 3 seasons ago had the #1 recruiting class in the country, and the last 2 years, 2 and 3? Mm-hmm. So that tells me the guys behind the guys that opt out are damn near as good as the guys that opt out. And we saw that when Brock Bowers went down. The second string tight end was practically just as good. Another thing about Brock Bowers is the guy injured his ankle in the middle of the season this year. He's going to be a first-round NFL draft pick. He's going to get millions of dollars. He doesn't have to come back and play college football for the Georgia Bulldogs. He does it because he's part of the team. He's part of the program. He feels strongly about competing to win games. That's kind of a rare attitude in college football. It's a bit of an old school attitude. And I'm banking on the fact that if Brock Bowers, and he's obviously a leader on that team, if he has that old school attitude, how many other guys in that locker room have that kind of attitude? And if you got an attitude like that, I'll put my money on you any day. And for that reason, I think Florida State's going to come out flat here. I think it's instead of a revenge spot, I think it's a letdown spot. I think they're crushed. They wanted to be in the playoffs. To be fair, I still think that Florida State got screwed. I think they deserved to be in the playoffs. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because they weren't going to be competitive. Everybody knows Alabama was going to be far more competitive than they were going to be, and somebody who deserved to be in the playoffs had to get left out, and they left out the team that didn't appear to be able to compete. And I'm not sure that that's so wrong. I think it's going to work out for the best for everybody, except for Florida State fans. And cry me a river. People get screwed every day. But Rye, why don't you tell us about your hot streaks, how you've been doing lately, and where people can find your picks?
Yeah, so you can find me on all social media as Rycape. My free plays can be found at jesseschule.com and pickadvisor.com. My premium plays can be found at PickAdvisor, Winners and Winers, InsidersRoom.com, winningcappers.net, and of course, jesseschule.com. I have 3 premium plays posted today. I have a college basketball play where I am 17-6 in my last 23. I also have an NBA play for the in-season tournament championship tonight, the NBA Cup, as they like to call it. I am 3-1 in my last 4 NBA plays. And, of course, I have a college football play for Army and Navy today, where I am on an incredible 14-0 run in college football. So come check me out. Maybe you want to get a 30-month or a 30-day package, and you'll get all my ball plays because I'm pretty heavy into that as well.
You're up there on the leaderboards for the last 30 days, are you not?
I am.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I've been doing well.
Sounds like a good buy. Well, Rye, thanks for stopping by. We'll pull you back in 5 minutes after I finish talking to Dan. And Dan, me and you get to talk about the only playoff game here on this show. We got Texas and Washington. And I'm a Pac-12 guy. You want me to go first, or you want to go first today, Dan?
I'll go first.
All right.
Feeling lucky. All right, this game is a rematch of last season, that Alamo Bowl. Washington beat Texas 27-20. I don't put a lot of stock in that game. One, it's a middle tier bowl game, and you got two teams that expected to be in a higher bowl last season. So you got to look at motivation. And I haven't bothered to go back, and since I don't put a lot of stock in it, I haven't gone back to see actually who played in that game, and that could also be a contributing factor to that score. But looking at this game, Longhorns coming at 12-1. They're coming off a big 49-21 win over Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. They're led by quarterback Quinn Ewers, throwing a little over 3,000 yards, 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions this season. He's got a couple of nice weapons on the outside, and Xavier Worthy, just under 1,000 yards this season and 9 touchdowns. Donnie Mitchell, 1,500 yards receiving, 10 touchdowns. So they can get the ball down the field. They got hurt a little bit in their backfield when Jonathan Brooks went down with an injury. He's out for the season, but his backup, C.J. Baxter's stepped in pretty admirably here, gaining 600 yards since he's been a starter. But I think this game's going to come down. I know Washington's got a great offense, but I think this game's going to come down to defenses. Texas only allows 17.5 points a game. They've been strong against the run. And as much as Washington relies on the passing game, you still need to be able to run the ball to open up that passing game. The Huskies' defense has been vulnerable at times. They give up 23.6 points a game. But I think the big difference in this game would be the pass rush. Washington doesn't really generate a pass rush. They average 1.46 sacks per game, and that's just not enough against Ewers. You can't let him sit back there and pick you apart in the pocket. Texas has 32 sacks on the season. I think if they can get pressure and keep Penix in the pocket, they'll have a lot of success there. The Huskies, this team reminds me of the Vikings a couple of years ago. They've had 8 one-score victories this season. And as we know, at some time, that seems to catch up to you. I like Texas to control this ball on the ground, and their pass rush would cause Penix some problems in the pocket. I think the Longhorns get revenge for last year's bowl loss. Hook 'em horns.
All right, Dan. Well, I got to admit, when I first glanced at this, the matchups came out, the announcements come out, and you look at the lines, and the first snap reaction is, I'm looking at an Alabama-Texas in the final, a rematch of the previous game from week 2. Hollywood story, looks great. But after digging into it a little deeper, seeing that Washington did beat them in the Alamo Bowl last year, I believe most of the starters played for both sides. Definitely the quarterbacks played. And, looking at what each team does well, it seems that it could be a favorable matchup for Washington here. You mentioned the close victories. I mean, I was one that bet against Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. I thought Oregon was going to spank them. And I got to admit, I was surprised. And I have to change my mind about this Washington team, because I really felt strongly that Oregon was one of the top 4 teams in the country, and for Washington to have beaten them twice. And Oregon is a big physical team with a very good defense that can run the ball and pound at you. And they were able to withstand that twice. And now they're facing a Texas team that you can't run on this Texas team. That is their strength. First in the pack, or first in the Big 12 against the run, 81 yards per game, only 2.9 yards per carry. But that doesn't necessarily matter to Washington. They don't run the ball that often anyways. They're a pass-heavy offense, and Texas was 10th in the Big 12 against the pass. So not a great matchup there for Texas. Another concern about this Texas team is they on offense they move the ball, and their defense puts them in great field position, but they often fail to convert great field position into points. They fail in the red zone at a rate that they shouldn't with the talent that they have. For a top-tier playoff team, their red zone conversion rate is pretty poor, and that could come back to haunt them here. I very rarely take underdogs thinking that they're going to lose and cover when we're only talking about a handful of points, but I think the 4.5 points could be significant here. I would like to see that Texas-Alabama rematch, but if you give me the 4.5 points, I'll take Washington in this playoff game. So that's how I'm seeing it. Dan, before we bring in the boys, why don't you tell us how you've been doing, where they can find your picks, and what you got coming up?
All right. Yeah. It's been great. NFL season. I'm 42, 23-2 for the whole season in the NFL. I'm starting to get back in the NBA and college and NHL since college football season's over. I'll have 2 plays up in college basketball. They both go later tonight, but I'll have them up in the next hour. You can find me at Picks and Parlays, theinsiderzoom.com, jesseschule.com, sportsmemo.com. And yeah, things are going well. Check me out. I also have a free play up on the early Alabama college basketball game here shortly.
All right, boys. Well, how is college hoops treating you guys? Anybody really kicking ass with college basketball of late?
I mean, I go on nice runs and then I take bad losses. But yeah, I mean, I'm doing decent. I'm doing better now than when the season started. I usually, as seasons go on, the numbers get sharper. I usually get stronger in my handicapping.
Well, I'm pleased to report that I did win my college basketball play yesterday, which puts me back in the black or back in the positive for the season, and 7-2 in the month of December. So as much as I'd like to improve on that, that's better than a kick in the butt, as they say, and things are trending upward as far as college hoops. Over the years, I've had some pretty good success with college basketball, but usually not more in the second half of the season than the first half. I mean, you got to be right on top of things. Really, I think that the guys that do well in the first half of the season are guys that only focus on college basketball. They don't do NFL. They're not doing NHL and NBA, because if you're doing NBA and NHL and all this stuff, it's hard to know what's going on in the Metro Atlantic Conference, and being completely in tune with 362 teams. I know I was doing a show the other day, and we were breaking down Florida Atlantic and Illinois, and one of the guests or one of the audience members was critical of us for not knowing the exact height of every player on the team and where they were, what high school they played at. And it's like, man, there's 362 teams, right? And that's just the Division I schools. So, I don't know every starter on every team, but I know enough to make a bet against the number, and that's my job. If you're a beat writer for that your school, you probably know more than me, and good for you. Anybody else got anything to add to that?
Handicap in jock strap sizes and whatnot.
I will make sure I tell him that if he lips off anymore. Joey, I understand you had some success last year with college hoops. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, I did really well last season. I don't usually dive into it until after Christmas. My whole thing with college basketball early on is it's really, like you said, it's early. There's a lot going on elsewhere, wrapping up NFL, college football. So after the holidays, that's when I'll really dial in on college basketball. But 6-4 the last 10. I was 3-0 last week, and 1-1 my last 2. So hoping to get some type of momentum going right into Christmas.
And were you the number 1 college basketball handicapper at pickadvisor.com last year?
Indeed, I was.
Well, you might as well tell us about it. I mean, don't be shy.
I was indeed the number 1 handicapper at PickAdvisor for college basketball. If you were $1,000 better, you would have won up $13K. I won roughly 56% of all my bets, and I was like 144 and like 113 or 145 and 116, something in that range.
All right. Well, that sounds profitable enough. Well, guys, unless anybody else has anything to add, I'll just thank you guys for joining me today and wish you good luck in the bowl season and good luck this Saturday with college hoops and all the other sports going off. And yeah, good luck unless you're against us.
Cash some tickets.